Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Janacek's Vec Makropulos, which was shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. The conductor was Donald Runnicles, the director was David Herrmann, the set designer and costume designer was Christoph Hetze, the lights were done by Ulrich Niepel, the video designer was Martin Eidenberger, the dramaturgy was handled by Anne Oppermann and Yvonne Bauer, and the chorus master was William Spalding. Now I know that I was supposed to review Wagner's Lohengrin also at the Deutsche Oper Berlin about 6 days ago. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of a fever and I had to rest within those 2 days until I felt slightly better the following Monday. So that was basically a potential Valentine's Day review out of the way, but I really have this review to compensate for that loss. With that said, let's get on to what I thought about the production. I thought the production was really, really good. I especially loved the opening moments in which we see a white curtain and we see the letters E and M flashing throughout the curtain, and then we conclude with E plus M equals me to signify that Emilia Marti was all of these incarnations, even to the point where she finally admits that she was Elena Makropulos all this time. So it's basically foreshadowing in terms of this opera, or in terms of this production. I thought it really played itself very well, and we even get to see Emilia Marti come on stage looking all desperate, looking all frazzled, looking frustrated. You can see that inner struggle that she has, and it comes out alive. And you could see that when someone comes in, she has to make sure she composes herself really well. And when the curtain opens, we see a stage, and we see like two halves of the stage. One half shows the present day, or technically like the late 1800s, and the other half shows like the past times. And also we get to see a lot of moving mannequins who have Elena's or Emilia's hairstyle or hair color and her color coding, as Emilia also wears a lot of crimsony and mauvish colors in her clothing, which also reflects the fact that her other previous incarnations also wore those colors during their lifetimes as well. And I thought it was a very interesting juxtaposition to really see how one of the previous incarnations of Emilia Marti came to be, like Ellie McGregor. There is one scene in particular in which Ellie McGregor also traverses into Emilia's time, and then Emilia traverses into Elian's time. I thought it was a very interesting juxtaposition to really see that there is a certain connection between who Emilia is and who one of her previous incarnations really was as a person. So I thought it was very interesting, and it was also one of the finest examples of show and don't just tell, especially when it came to all the mannequins. And the ending, I really have to say, was equally as powerful. You get to see a lot of the characters stripping down like the incarnations of Emilia Marti before Emilia spills the beans that she is Elena Makropulos all this time. And you get to see them being stripped, and you get to see them giving the Makropulos formula to the other characters and even to Krista. And then the opera ends with Emilia finally getting herself up to the pearly gates of paradise, finally shedding herself off her mortal coil, and finally finding peace for the rest of her life, or her afterlife in this case. Not to mention, I really enjoy the costumes. The major standout for me was not only Emilia's costumes, but also that of her previous incarnations. Now, with traditional productions of Vec Makropulos, you'd usually expect Emilia to be in a lot of extravagant, outlandish, elegant, and basically a lot of costumes in which she's required to wear a lot of jewelry, a lot of makeup, heavy makeup especially, a lot of fancy hats, high-heeled shoes, and be dressed up to the nines, especially when it comes to a lot of these outlandish outfits, just to make herself look like a diva and act like a diva and really be a diva. With this production, we first see her in a crimson mauve robe, and then we see her in a crimson trench coat, and then we see her in like a mauvish crimson ball gown, and then we see her back into her robe. Plus, her previous incarnations are also dressed in the similar color scheme as Emilia. Like we have different variants. You have Elena Makropulos, who dresses up in 17th century clothing. You have Eugenia Montes, who dresses up in Spanish gypsy clothing as well, though she has a lot of brighter colors to her as well. And then you see, who's that? Ellie McGregor dressed up as a Scottish belle. And then you also see Elsa Müller and Katarina Mishkina dressed up also in different clothing. So I really have to say that the production and the costumes were very well done. I'm not going to mince words here. And like I said before, this is the production that also uses the show and don't just tell principle really well. And now let's get on to the singers, starting off with Evelyn Herlitzius as our title heroine, Emilia Marti. Now, when I heard that she was going to sing this very thankless title heroine, I was really excited for her, yet also kind of fearful for her. Excited because I knew that she was gonna fit the part really well, and it's no surprise. She's a very wonderful and involving singing actress. Fearful because, well, for many years, she's been singing a lot of the heavy, dramatic soprano repertoire, so I wasn't really so sure of how this role was gonna toll on her voice, or if she was ever going to make it in this role, because, well, I've seen her do Kundry, and I've seen her do Isolde, and it's no surprise that she's been singing a lot of the big roles like Brunhilde, Elektra, Ortrud, Kundry, Isolde, and the Dyer's Wife for many years, and I also have her Dyer's Wife on DVD. So I was quite fearful for that. I was quite scared because I wasn't so sure if she was going to make it vocally, but I also knew for the fact that she was going to make it in terms of her acting. And by the time I saw her in this role, I was actually really impressed. She was able to really make it through with this role. She not only had the looks, but she also had the acting, she also had the temperament, and she also had the mannerisms which made Emilia Marti come alive. In fact, I really have to say that her portrayal is quite on par with a lot of previous Emilia Martis. She was able to make her a very fascinating and extremely troubled character. She really gave it her all, making Emilia someone who suffers, someone who wants a way out of this turmoil, someone who wants to end her life because she's been living for many, many years, so she wants to finally find an end to it. She wants to come to an end and just find peace. Yet she can't find that peace yet until something is solved. You really get to see this woman traveling from scene to scene, trying to find a way out, yet also maintain her status as a diva and even defend herself using her cold and indifferent attitude towards everyone around her. I really felt that Herlitzius was able to really make this character very fascinating and very much a character who was one of the fine definitions of a soul crying out for help, a soul crying out for freedom, a soul crying out for hope that she can finally be away from this mundane world. And her voice, I have to say, was actually in good shape, especially when it came to the high notes, in which she is very well known for. She can do whatever she wants with those high notes, especially when it comes to making them burst out with such gusto. She does it really well, and I really have to say that she was such a joy in this role. Sure, I do miss that creaminess of a spinto soprano, which I could usually expect from any soprano singing Emilia Marti, but I really thought that with Evelyn Helitius's metal in her voice and in terms of her acting skills, I really felt that she nailed this role really well. And I was really quite surprised at just how much lung power she was still able to produce with this extremely thankless role. And then we have the main hero, Albert Gregor, sung by Ladislav Elgar, who I also saw 2 years ago as Steva Buria from Janacek's Janufa, also at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. I thought he did fabulously as well. Sure, he did start off a bit on the lukewarm side, but he was able to build himself up through, especially in the later acts. And in terms of his high notes, there were times that I wasn't really so sure if he was going to make it or not. Sometimes his high notes sounded really good, other times I was rather skeptical. But other than that, I really have to say that he maintained everything within him in terms of his acting, and on top of that, he has a very, very commanding and very elegant stage presence. What more can you say about Monsieur Elgar? He's a very tall and handsome and very alluring figure on stage, and he's quite the stage animal. He's able to portray this man really well with such an elegance and a charm and such a ruggedness that few other tenors could ever compare. And I really have to say that his voice was actually good all throughout. He was able to maintain that tune really well without going out of tune, without going flat, and he just really pushes through very well and rather effectively, giving off such a fine portrayal of this extremely thankless tenor character, and he basically did very well for this role. And then singing the role of Janacek was, let's see here, Gideon Poppe. I thought his voice was very magnificent as usual. He has a very fine ring to his voice, especially on the high notes, and he was able to make Janacek a very likable and very charming character. Singing the role of his father, Baron Jaroslav Prush, was Derek Welton, and my goodness, he has a very commanding and very, very powerful stage presence, especially when it comes to his voice. Yes, he's been singing some minor roles at the Deutsche Oper so far, but hearing him and seeing him in one of the major roles, especially for a dramatic baritone, was a huge treat. And he sang it with such abandon that I was practically on the edge of my seat every time he was on stage. What more can I say about Mr. Derek Welton? He is a tall, handsome, and just alluring figure on stage. He has a certain swagger which he brings to this character. He has a certain gusto that he also brings to this character, and a certain command that really makes me so excited to see him on stage from point A to point B. He truly was a standout in this character. And then we have the role of Vitek, sung by Paul Kaufmann, who sang his role really well with fine tunes and really fine high notes and fine acting chops. Singing the role of Krista or Christina was the very wonderful lyric mezzo Yana Kurutsova, who I've been seeing a lot of at the Deutsche Berlin in roles like Donna Elvira and even some of the character roles. I thought she did fabulously as Krista. Now, compared to Evelyn Herlitzius's Metal and Histrionics, Yana Kurutsova's Christina is sweeter, more ingenuic, and creamier sounding. She was able to bring a certain sweetness and a certain unpretentiousness into this character. As thankless as her character is, I could really see that she had a ball with this character. I could really see that she was able to make Christina come alive as a character, and she is really such an honest singer. She had no gimmick whatsoever, and her timbre is clean and pure, as to be expected from someone like Mademoiselle Kurutsova. Singing the role of Dr. Colonnati was Seth Carrico, who I've also been seeing a lot of in a lot of productions at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Once again, he has a very fine voice, and I could really tell that this guy has an even stronger future in terms of the bass baritone parts. He sang the role of Dr. Colonnati with such a fine technique and a great stage presence, and he was also able to make great use of this extremely thankless basso character. And he really acted well. He didn't overact, as to be expected from Seth Carrico, and he produced really fine tones all throughout. Singing the role of the manservant was Andrew Harris. He was very fine in this role, especially helped with his trademark round, rich basso voice. And then singing the role of the cleaning lady was a new name for me. She is a contralto who's been singing a lot throughout Europe, and her name is Rebecca Raffel. I'm telling you, she was absolutely fabulous in this character role, and we need more true contraltos like her. She has a very dark timbre, which can be black on the low notes, yet full on them. And every time she is on stage, she pretty much makes the other singers look like midgets. She has a very powerful, commanding, strong, and just a very stentorian stage presence, which makes her like a tank, full of sound, full of charisma, and full of a certain charm, which I usually love in contraltos. Aside from going crazy over sopranos and tenors, I always go crazy over the contralto profondos and the basso profondos. And I definitely have to say that Rebecca Raffel has a very fine sound, which is very useful in a lot of the deep contralto roles. And I really want to see a lot more of her. I'm sure that one of these days she's gonna be a great Clytemnestra, and I'm sure that she's also sang Erda. I'm sure that she's also sang Ulrika, but I'm sure that she's gonna make a great Madame de Coissy and a great Clytemnestra. I'm sure that the future will also give her those roles and really make her sing to the best of those abilities. This is an example of a true contralto that we need a lot more of these days, because when you think about it, the contralto voice is very much a rare breed when all is said and done. True, we have a lot of these mezzo contraltos and deep mezzo sopranos as well, but when it comes to having a true and genuine contralto, we'd be very hard pressed. The ones I know who are classified as true contraltos, in my opinion, would usually be Eva Podlesh, Hannah Schwartz, and Ronita Miller, and of course, who's that? Rebecca Raffel, who really stood up on her own 2 feet and really gave such a fine and magnificent performance, despite this role being extremely thankless as hell. And then we have Adriana Farfetchka singing the role of the chambermaid. She has a very fine and lovely voice and a very bright future. And then we also have the EM mannequins, who are basically portrayed by Yana Serikbayeva, Andrea Schifa, Catherine Jodouin, Denise Noack, Fabienne Shera, and Anastasia Yakimenko, who did very fine playing the mannequins, and especially when it came to the more silent parts as well, like Josef Ferdinand Prus, done by Michael Inov, and Ferdinand Karl Gregor, done by Munis Gaschel, and the servants of Vitek and Gregor, respectively, done by Dietmar König and Javier Carranza. I really thought that these actors really did a very fine job. So overall, I was rather impressed with the quality of the singing. I really have to give it to Evelyn Herlitzius for really pulling through with this extremely thankless character. And also to a lot of the singers as well for really making the best out of their characters. And the conducting done by Donald Runnicles was actually well done. Sure, I would have loved to have the overture have a lot more bite, but despite that, he really pulled through and really muscled through throughout the evening. So overall, I really have to say that this was an excellent premiere of this opera, and I was rather lucky to have caught it as well. So I really have to say that if you haven't seen this opera yet at the Deutsche Oper, you really have to check it out. It had its premiere just tonight, and I was rather enthralled. Well, that's all for now. And for those of you who were at the premiere of this opera, and for those of you who've already seen this opera, what are your thoughts about this production? Did you like the singers, especially Evelyn Herlitzius in the title role? Did you like the conducting? Did you like the overall production? Or did you feel like there were some things that were or not to your liking? Please comment below. And if you like this video, please subscribe as well. And until then, this is Antoni signing off and wishing you all a good night.